Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host, Alex Sashlow. This week, Alex seems to think it's been a relatively quiet week for Trump. I'm not sure I agree with him on that, but he's just been talking his way into a constitutional crisis, increasing spying efforts on Greenland. No,
That's seriously. My favorite one.
He wants to reopen Alcatraz. And meanwhile, inflation is soaring and Americans continue to feel the pain. Actually, as I said, I'm not quite sure. It's been a quiet week, but Alex, where should we get started?
Look, I really wanted to talk about Alcatraz in Greenland, but we're going to skip it. So I think we also made a mistake this week because we keep asking for more questions, and we have by far the most we've ever had. Not a lot on Greenland and Alcatraz, as much as I wanted to talk about it. Most of them have to do with Trump going on Meet the Press a couple days ago, and it was one of the more insane things I've ever heard him say, and it freaked out a lot of our listeners. I think Kristen Welker asked if he had to uphold the Constitution as president, and he said, "I don't know." Joe, it's literally in the oath he took. I got to ask, and I'm just going to synthesize a bunch of the questions. What can we do to hold him accountable for this? And by the way, where does this train end?
Well, I keep saying it's us that are going to have to hold him accountable, and it's people taking to the streets in peaceful protests to take him on. That's the only thing that's going to, it's not going to end with the Senate somehow getting courageous. I'm talking about the Republican senators. None of that's going to happen. The courts are doing their best to throw hurdles up, but he also knows how to run that clock out. We've seen that many times because the time it takes the legal system to run through things. So, no, it's us. And I think we're seeing signs that the American people are feeling it. So we can get into that a little bit, I think, when you want to get there.
Well, I do remember one of the shows it is last year when he was really stepping up just the insane stuff he was saying on the campaign trail. And we were talking about how there was a difference between his intentional lying and his just blustering. And I think this was initially when we started talking about like Greenland, and he wanted to take over a bunch of places. And he was the Panama Canal to Canada last year too. And you pointed out that he does this to see how far he can go until there's pushback. And it seems like so far there has not been a ton of pushback. That may be changing. I mean, the polls are starting to show that the American people, which I know you want to get into, we the people, again, are really starting to wonder about like...
Look, he's not gotten any pushback from anywhere. The biggest pushback he's had didn't come from the people, from any of the places you'd like to see, the Senate or any of that stuff, the Republicans in the Senate, even corporate America. No, what happened was the pushback came when he said tariffs and the rest of the world said hell no. And so that started crashing our market, opening up bond yields, spreads, to the point where literally the pushback was if you don't do the 90-day pause, we're going to, literally, we were on the brink of literally a bond crisis. And so, yeah, they had to rush in and tell him, hey, we got to do something. They did the 90-day pause. But the things that he can push back against him will not be the Senate, will not be, the courts have, and the flurry of lawsuits from AGs and Elias, other people, legal teams are sitting there and doing a lot, not sitting there, they're working and they're throwing lawsuit after lawsuit at the government and Trump. But no, what is going to happen, I think, is, and we've talked about this, we've got to get to 12, 13, 14 million people out there taking him on and protesting in the streets in civil and nonviolent. So you want to go like, well, yeah, but how's that going to happen? Well, you're starting to see real impact with the American people that could lead to that. Trump's openly defying rulings from the Supreme Court, including a unanimous Supreme Court ruling against his administration. He thinks he's above the law and continues to openly defy the courts, which is supposed to serve as a check on his presidency. 67% overall cited that as a major concern, and that included 38% of Republicans.
That's a huge number
huge
of
number.
Republicans.
Yeah, you're also starting to see bigger and bigger fractures between MAGA and non-MAGA Republicans, especially on issues like immigration. For example, regarding Kilmer Abrego Garcia, 63%, because this is that whole question of that, this is the court saying, hey, you have to facilitate him coming back. And of course, they're doing nothing, right? They're defying the court order, ignoring it, etc. So when asked, 63% overall say he should be brought home. Independents, over literally a plus 40%. We're talking massive plus side with independents who say...
Yeah, it's like 60-20 or something.
60-20, yeah. I mean, it's 40%. Differential, they're all on the side of bring him home. Non-MAGA Republicans, it's plus 19%. Non-MAGA Republicans. The one group that's the other way are MAGA Republicans, and that's a net 36 minus.
Here's a good way to illustrate just this fracture. And I think this is where you're starting to see some of these issues really start to divide the core, I'm going to call it the Republican base. It's mostly MAGA, but there is a 55-point difference between MAGA Republicans and non-MAGA Republicans on the Kilmer Abrego Garcia, should you bring him home. That is massive. A majority of non-MAGAs want him home. A huge majority of MAGAs do not. Look, those MAGA Republicans, they ain't going anywhere in anything. But those non-MAGA Republicans, and I know you brought it up last week too, it's the people that didn't vote for him in the primary, they are going to have the opportunity in elections coming up to make their voices heard. And these are all points lining up that they are catching the car on a lot of this stuff, and midterms are going to be really awful for them if this continues.
Right, we're seeing the polling, and I'm seeing the polling. You're seeing the polling in Virginia. It's a huge, Democrats at every level, and then let's forget about the lieutenant governor's race. There won't even be a race there with how the Republicans are blowing themselves up. But I think you're going to see that this is starting to have a real impact. Look, we used to look at these off-year elections and say, yeah, they're going to be a big sign of what can happen in the next midterm. I'm less interested in these numbers because of that, and even less interested in them because of what it may mean in Virginia and New Jersey. I'm more interested in them because I'm convinced that the only thing that will push back is us, the American people. And so if you look at that kind of differential, if you look at where independents are going, and particularly on these questions of defying the Supreme Court,
yeah,
et cetera, you're getting to a place where I think enough that there are plenty of Americans who will be willing to stand up and say, no, not on our watch. And I think that's a pretty important thing when you're trying to get to numbers. I think that it will take 12 million, 15 million, somewhere up there, of American people in protest saying, stop this. Not he won't listen to that, but that might give some of the Republicans in the Senate the spine. The courts will not buckle. They need the institutions that are going to, we count on to stop this stuff, the guardrails. They're only going to be, and this is proven now, he's going to keep running roughshod over them. They're only as strong as the American people who stand up and say no. And I think when you look at that Meet the Press interview that we just talked about, and the reaction, the numbers that are coming out of that are pretty important.
It strikes me that fracture you mentioned earlier, though, is really coming from, again, how divided people are when it comes to I'm thinking more about that non-MAGA number and what we got to do between now and next year. And again, I know I keep bringing this back to elections, but you want proof there's a bubble? Look at what Fox viewers think about in that poll number. It's crazy. I mean, among Republicans, there's a 20-point difference between Fox News viewing Republicans and those who don't watch Fox. Among Fox News viewing Republicans, 69% say Trump is following court orders already. If you don't watch Fox, it's only 50%. So
it's only 50% of Republicans. 50% of Republicans who don't watch Trump say that he's not following what the court has ordered. 50% say he is. But the difference there, it's a 19-point difference. In Fox Republicans, 69% say he follows court orders. 50% who don't watch Fox Republicans say he follows the court order. That's a difference. Again, I'm less interested in the difference in that other than that we're starting to see some hope that some of those people stand, that predominantly the non-Fox watchers stand with us in the protest movement, the pro-democracy movement that I think needs to build visibly, because it's only that part of the being visible is that it makes that 50% that we're talking about, that difference between MAGA and non-MAGA, it makes them, when you get to those kind of numbers, then they know they're not the only ones who think that way. They actually see that, and in fact, this is one of my things that I think we need to start doing is we need to take the color red away from these people, right? They don't own the color red. Red hats, thousands of red hats in protest would confuse the living daylights out of everybody, and I think get more of them to pay attention to why we're out there. But anyway, where do you want to go from here?
Well, I think I just want to read you two quotes from voters. And again, this is all in the latest Navigator poll. This is an independent in Pennsylvania. We elected Trump to keep America safe and to keep gang members out. We didn't elect him to take people from 15 years ago and take their families and break up their families and pretty much throw them away and say stupid shit like he's going to put Americans in jail and pay the other countries millions of dollars to do it. Another one in Michigan said, we have due process. And due process, when it's denied for one person, it could deny it for everyone, and that's it. If you can break the Constitution, what's to stop us from being a dictatorship? So, Joe, I know you already mentioned, look, nobody in Congress is going to hold him accountable. It's got to be us. But it just feels like at some point we have to figure out a way to apply some of these electoral consequences to all of his enablers in Congress, too. Like, it's got to be a 1-2 punch.
Yeah, it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be either they see enough of us out there taking them on that they fear the pro-democracy movement more than they fear the MAGA base of their party in terms of the electoral consequences. That's when they get the spine to stand up to Trump and MAGA. Now, I'm not counting on them to do that because they're all chicken shits and cowards. But then they do stand in 2026, and there will be electoral consequences to that denial, to them still hanging and against the pro-democracy movement. But you can't bet that the electoral system will be in place in enough places to impact the Senate. The House, I think, is a different story. As we've said many times on other episodes, enough of the marginal battleground districts are in places like California and New York and Illinois, where there's no way, no matter what crazy executive order Trump puts in place about 5 IDs required or whatever they're going to throw in place, they won't be enforced. The states and the counties are responsible for holding elections, and those I think we can count on the enough battleground seats in the House being in play where they can't really mess with the lines or the rules in a way that we will overwhelm enough to take the House. The difference is that the Senate, I think it's going to take, well, we're seeing it. Kemp decided not to go in Georgia. It looks like they may
MTG, baby.
They may get Marjorie Taylor Greene as a nominee there, so that's going to help. But in the end, it is I think it's the pro-democracy movement growing in such visible numbers way before that. I mean, I'm talking about we got to do it in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months to stop, because every day we don't, more damage is being done. We can't wait to 2026 to stop the damage. We're going to see a lot more of that economically, but you look at what's happening to healthcare, NIH, you look at what they're doing and destroying whole departments. Either we rise up against it and really drive, again, get people to understand, no, don't expect this to return to normal. You have to get out there, and you need, as an American, to join with other people who love this country and want to stop this destruction. Now, part of that too is understanding there's an opportunity in the destruction, that yes, he may have created big damage to all these places. They're going to need to be rebuilt. They're great at destroying things. They have no ideas how to reinvent or redo or fix anything. That's a big opportunity. Now I'm talking, switching hats, now moving from just the pro-democracy movement to what Democrats need to do is, these things, it's not about defending democracy, defending the way things were. First of all, he's broken our democracy and he's broken the government. And he's destroying whole departments and destroying alliances, wrecking, even going after our own allies as trading partners and imposing pain there. No, how many more months of this do you want? So the only thing that's going to matter is, do the American people get that it's up to them? And that means if you've been going to one of these hands-off rallies or protests, bring one more. It's the same thing I've been saying for a year now. Get one more person, one more family member, one more friend, and drag them there. Get them to join you. With over 3 million people are out there at any one time when one of these is called. So let's make it 6. And then let's make it 12. People keep asking, what can we do? That's what we can do. That isn't hard. It isn't hard for me to get one friend to come with me, or for you. And it's not going to take giving, who you're going to give to in a Senate race. That's way off. Because there'll be plenty of people to do that. That's not what's going to stop this. It may be a hurdle if we can get the House back, but he's going to still be there. And the nutcases with this rabid, radical agenda to destroy it, to just burn it all down, they'll still be in place. That's what we have to stop.
Joe, I wanted to get to one more listener question, because this one's pretty good. I think I know your answer, but this is from Crystal in Texas. It's now May. Democrats are no closer to unifying or picking any kind of candidate than when you started calling for it in January. How late is too late? Should we be worried? Joe, I realize you're going to say it's not just about the elections, but when you're talking about the actual candidates Democrats are trying to put out and what the hell we're supposed to do for 2028, the longer we wait, the worse this is going to be, right?
I keep saying don't wait for that, but okay. I mean, look, I've been through 9 different presidential cycles. It doesn't change, right? What's going to happen, the only way you're going to get unity behind because of the way our system works, it will be when the Democrats nominate a presidential candidate nominee for 2028. That person, just as Bill Clinton did, just as Barack Obama did. I mean, a lot of the party fights stop. Right now, there's going to be a whole bunch of people from a whole bunch of different wings and a whole bunch of different that are positioning themselves and going out. And I think that's all good, because most of them are taking on Trump and what's going on. But no one's going to unify behind Bernie Sanders, and no one's going to unify behind Gavin Newsom or Whitmer or Westmore, or name all the people who might run or who are out there doing the good fight of taking this stuff on. But no one's going to unify behind any one of them until there's a process to nominate where we have primaries, caucuses, all that stuff, and then we conventions, and we nominate somebody. That's actually my whole point. And by the way, it wouldn't be any different if the shoe was on the other foot. No one would unify. Go back to 2016. No one was unified behind Donald Trump in the Republican Party. It started out with a whole bunch of people, all of them front runners, and everybody thought, oh, that's the way. Jeb Bush will be the leader of the party, and we will support him. No, there was a primary. There was a dogfight. Donald Trump rolled over every single one of them and transformed his party. You go back to 2008. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was for sure the nominee. And this Obama was, geez, that's interesting, but he's not ready. Is the country ready for him? And guess what? Yeah, he was ready, and the country was ready for him. And that's who the party unified behind when they started out all thinking they were going to be for Hillary Clinton. I've said it before, everybody from Liz Cheney to Bernie Sanders, help them, support them. Don't say, geez, Liz Cheney, I can't believe what she did, what her dad did. No, just like they're pro-democracy. They're out there taking this stuff on. Get behind them. Take people to, when they're speaking, take someone to hear them. Grow the movement. We've got a movement that goes from Liz Cheney all the way over to Bernie Sanders. It's like a pretty big spectrum that you can get behind somebody. And then, yeah, the Democrats were going to have a nomination fight. Yeah, I called early on. I said, hey, it's an interesting idea. I said at the time, too, there's no way the Democratic Party would do it, which is hold a convention this year in November and nominate our nominee now, who we could all unify around, and they could name their cabinet and shadow this one. I thought that was an interesting idea. I didn't come up with it, but I also told everybody, the people who did bring that idea up, that like, yeah, I know my party. Sorry, folks, it will never happen. And there's all kinds of reasons. I mean, just, oh my gosh, even thinking about trying to get that out of Rules Committee and the DNC or any of that stuff, not going to happen. So yeah, we can keep asking that question, but I'm telling you, don't wait for it, because we're a long way off from somebody emerging as the leader of this party. It will not happen until we nominate. They fight it out. They argue their policies in debates and in state after state, and we finally consolidate around the new nominee. That will be how you develop the leader of the Democratic Party. In the meantime, new leaders are starting to be out there. I mean, whether Seth Moulton, Jason Crow, a whole bunch of Ro Khanna, again, across the spectrum of the party, AOC is definitely going to be out there. Those people, every single one of them, don't get into like the purity tests or any of that. Just support their voice against what's happening and get them to join in these protests. Get them to bring more people out to anyone in your area. If you've got somebody like that in your area, ask them to get there. We can build this thing. But it's not by hoping for some leader to lead us out of the wilderness. No, we're going to have to do it. And the thing that's crazy about this is it doesn't take that many people. It takes, to be active and out there and protesting. And historically, it has always been about 3.5% of the people of a country who have, by being out there in peaceful protest, taken on the autocrat or the dictator wannabe and caused them to fail or fall. And that's 12 million Americans. I remember when we did cartwheels down the street because like 3 million Americans gave Barack Obama $500 million. They contributed to him, 3 million. That's 1% of the American people gave to him. And everybody thought, wow, that world, just the whole thing has changed, right? Yeah. Guess what happens if you have 10, 12, 13, 14 million people out there protesting, striking, really refusing and resisting? It's not that big a number, and we're running into places now where 62, 63% of the American people think this guy's not following court orders. He's not providing due process. There's more polling that we could have gotten into, and I wish we had, but there's all kinds of polling now that one of the big things on the reason he's underwater on immigration is because of people understanding, big majorities understanding that if you have, and you read some of the quotes, Alex, that if you don't have due process with your immigration policy, then there's no due process for anybody. And what I'm saying is it's not just those quotes, but if you actually go now and look at the numbers of the American people who are getting what that means. The first thing was the made-for-TV shaved heads and tattoos being shipped to El Salvador. And I'm sure that a lot of Republicans and others say, oh, yeah, that's interesting. No, they're now getting, oh, wait a minute. There's no due process. They're taking children off the street and shipping, who were citizens, U.S. citizens, and without a whole lot of time and no ability to get a hearing or anything, shipping them out of the country. And Americans are starting to have real problems with that. And we're not talking about the economy. The tariffs, the inflation, the prices, that's another thing. I'm talking about the American people starting to no, they're not engaged with the pictures anymore, with the attention-getting moment. They're actually now starting to look at what it all means, and they don't like it. They want it to stop. So now's the moment for us to get as many of them as possible to join the pro-democracy movement and to get visible. And then that's where I think we have to stop being binary about this. This is not red and blue. There are not red and blue states. The Republicans who are worried about due process it's not that simple anymore. This is what has happened. It's like the social networks that you like or you dislike something, you follow or you unfollow somebody. It's not, we have been polarized into a binary, actually inhuman way to look at things. And what we need to do, that's why I think, wear a red hat to the protests. I don't care. Wear a Cincinnati Reds hat. I've never been a big Cincinnati Reds fan, but whatever. Any red hat you got, grab it and go. Because they see 100,000 or 5,000 red hats protesting in front of NOAA. Take the color red away from them. It's not a tribal color. We shouldn't let it be. But it's that kind of thinking, I think, and that kind of a movement that I think we really have to make it visible in the next 6 months and really build it over the next 2 or 3.
Joe, I think you finished strong. That is a great place to end today.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for listening to that Trippi show. Again, I'm going to ask you to join a civil social network for real human beings that says SEZ.us. You'll find it in your app stores for Android and Apple. And it's not binary. We don't have just like or dislike or just follow or unfollow. It's a totally different civil place where we can grow a pro-democracy movement. And I meant what I said about get out of the binary red-blue thing. We want reasonable people with all views on the network actually reasonably talking and arguing the case and bringing people over. And so anyway, I hope you'll check it out. This podcast will always be free and is part of Lincoln Square, so check out the latest at lincolnsquare.media. Please subscribe to that Trippi show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question and a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. Thanks all.